2009, 24 to 25 years old. I started becoming closer to the friends that I met last year. I continued to hang out with Ken, especially a lot in the beginning of this year. I continued to help him make food to help him in his business, and I really enjoyed it a lot. I continued to hang out with his roommate, and I really enjoyed hanging out with her. I got over the crush that I had last summer, and I was glad that I did. I didn't want to feel like, I didn't like feeling like a crush could interfere our friendship and us simply having fun and being around each other. So we continued to be friends, and I enjoyed being her friend. I also hung out with a couple of his other friends too every now and then. We often had a lot of little get-togethers. We sang a lot of kirtans and talked about spiritual things. I was often really excited and joyful when I was invited to some of the get-togethers and events. They also really admired my joy that I had and my interest in spiritualism and wanting to serve the world and help the world awaken and just being and trying to obtain the positive perspective. It made them feel good too. I started to meet some. Not only was I hung out with that group of people, but I also met a few other people that I also became friends with too. I met this one girl named Elizabeth at Unity Church, and I really enjoyed hanging out with her. She was a really good friend. She always made me feel really good and really admired me a lot. And that really helped boost my confidence. Through Elizabeth, I also met this guy named Jan who owned a karate studio. He let me take. He and Elizabeth often invited me over to some of the karate studio events, and I hung out with them and enjoyed and kind of met some more people there too. He let me take classes for free, and I helped him clean his studio as an exchange. I had a lot of fun doing this, and the work was actually fun. I hung out with. Through Elizabeth and Jan, I met another friend named Stacy who was really cool, a lot of fun. I also met a girl named Kari who became Jan's girlfriend. We often went to a lot of parties together, and I enjoyed myself. Sometimes I felt a little bit out of place because most of the people talked about things. Again, people talked about things that I often didn't know much about, such as movies, politics, and music. I often didn't like that, and I wished I was more knowledgeable, had a more well-rounded knowledge about most things. And it seemed like everybody else did, and it was weird. And I felt like if I did, I would have more to talk about, and I'd have more fun. However, in spite of that, I still did have fun. When I did get upset about it, I looked at it in a spiritual perspective, and then looked at it as, and just tried to just know that I could be happy no matter what. I started going on drives. I called them road trips. I continue to enjoy looking at power lines, and I mostly went on road trips to look at power lines. I still pretend, when I looked at the power lines, I still pretended they were from a utility that I made up. It was only more enhanced. I still drew them. And my made up utility started getting more refined, and I continued to learn more about power lines and electricity as a result. The long drives were so much fun. I often listened to music, and it was kind of like an adventure. Most of the time I went on these road trips was on Fridays and during the weekends, and these were often during the days when I went to the clubs at night to try to dance with girls. This often made road trips even more exciting because when I went on these adventures, I would sometimes wonder, am I going to get laid tonight? Will I finally hit it off? Will I finally be able to experience that amazing experience that I can possibly imagine? Will it finally happen tonight? And it was interesting. It made the whole road trip like a movie that could possibly have an awesome ending. And that made the road trips even more interesting. However, however, at the end of all these road trips, though, however, I never did get laid. But a couple of times I did dance with some women, and I was really happy about that. Later during the year, during the road trips, I started connecting with things I saw. I I practice improving my spiritual awareness and try to see things in the truth like how God sees it. Seeing it in the perspective of the truth. I knew that we were all connected, and I tried to look at that in that perspective. When I drove, I looked at all the trees and everything, and while listening to music, I pretended I was part of all that, and the feeling was absolutely amazing. I looked at the beautiful scenery and believed that I was part of it. It was hard to fully believe it. It was hard, and most of the time I didn't. But still, even with even just believing it a tiny bit, it was amazing. And I wish I could believe it more. Sometimes when I believed it slightly, I could almost feel the energy of the things that I connected with, and that felt so awesome. But I knew that wouldn't even compare to what it would be like if I got laid with a beautiful girl, though. I decided to go on another road trip to Florida. I decided to go on this trip to really appreciate. I decided to go on this road trip because I really appreciated the other one. I again looked at all the power lines. But when I went on this road trip, I even wanted to get laid even more bad than I did before. For a moment I pretended that I did to see what it felt like, and the feeling was spectacular. That only made me wish I wanted to even more. So I continued to try to work hard and made it almost top priority to try to talk to women. I've learned a lot. I continued to try to improve my social skills. I knew confidence was key. I knew I had to be confident, but I also noticed another thing that made socialization hard, and that was the fact that I really wanted to get laid, and it almost made me put pressure on myself. As a result, I tried to work on that. I tried to look at it in a spiritual perspective. I realized I was becoming attached to wanting to do that, and I realized if you want something too bad, you can actually decrease the chance of it actually happening. So I learned to actually look at everything in a way of knowing that if it never does happen, even if I miss out on an amazing experience, I could still be happy and at peace, because in truth, everything's amazing. Everything has the potential to be enjoyed. Even if I never ever get the chance to hook up with a girl for the rest of my life, I knew I could still, appreciate other things. I could still appreciate connecting with trees. I could still appreciate, just laying on the bed or even going to work. Work is not exciting, but I know I have the potential to even enjoy that. So I just knew that you have the potential to enjoy anything, and so that was kind of a benefit, realizing that.